Welcome to the Awesemo Slate Starter podcast. I'm missing calling it the Early Bird podcast, but they did away with that name once I wasn't doing the podcast anymore. It was reinvented. It's got a new name, but it's not as fun to say. But you know what is fun? I am being joined once again by Pete Rogers here as we get ready to break down a leisurely 3-game slate. We've got a 7:30 game, a 10 o'clock game, and a 10:30 game. Pete, it's not like the crazy Monday and soon to be crazy Wednesday that we'll be having. How did your Monday go into lock? We were recording this just before 9 o'clock in between the window of games because we know Fred VanVleet will be playing. We got Jimmy Butler ruled out. We're still waiting to see, I think, on Damian Lillard, and then whatever happens with the starting lineup there for Chicago. How was your Monday night? A lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. I was hoping that Bam would be active, and that the late scratch kind of threw me for a loop. As I didn't know who to replace him with. Obviously, I wanted to get to as much Mobley as possible, but I feel like I probably should have just went a little bit bullish on some other players. But of course, that's how it is. You know, you try to. The late swap is definitely interesting and something that I'm getting used to, and also trying to figure out. Well, I have a ton of salary left over now that I'm looking. I don't have Bam in my lineup, so how do I adjust my lineup so that I get the highest projected lineup? Using the tools over on Awesemo definitely helps. But yeah, it was unfortunate that Bam was ruled out. I was really hoping that he was going to be able to crush OKC.
Yeah, that would have been a fun one, but I guess if you're going to rest everybody, do it against OKC.
Makes sense. Yeah,
you still have a decent chance of winning. Plus, they got that gift win in Utah that we were talking about without Jimmy Butler, so they're playing with house money at the moment. Let's see what other fun stuff happened Sunday night. So while we were on air, we learned that Will Barton was indeed not going to play. That actually didn't come out until after lock. And then the other thing we didn't find out until the game was finally over, but Alize Johnson did not take the court for Chicago, and they only played an 8-man rotation. They are playing again tonight. They're one of the 2 games that we're going to be doing some late swap here after we do some recording. But the teams that are playing on Tuesday, we have 6 of them. Golden State at Brooklyn. We've got Philly at Utah, and we've got the Spurs at the Clippers. None of them played on Monday, so no back-to-backs or no back end of the back-to-backs there. Few injuries we want to watch out for. Paul Millsap still out, or still away from the team, I should say. Nick Claxton still dealing with that an illness that's not COVID related. And then Joe Harris has a foot injury. From Philadelphia, Joel Embiid is going to miss a couple more games with COVID-19 issues. Matisse Thybulle is still out for the same reason. And then you've got Danny Green, who is already been ruled out. He's been dealing with that hamstring injury, sat a couple games, came back, and then now he's out again. Just makes sense to not push him too much because he's not the spring chicken that he once was. And then we get into San Antonio. They're still missing Jakob Poeltl. He is I think he has cleared the health and safety protocol, but he's been out long enough, and he did have Corona, that he's going to need some conditioning there. And that, I think, wraps up most of it. Oh, Keon Johnson was ruled out just before we went on air. He is going to be out Tuesday, foot injury or ankle injury on that. So do you want to go game by game? I should have asked you this before we started recording, or would you like to go by position? It's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because we only have 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, whatever's easiest. I think that we could probably touch on both. Going game by game might be able to dive into each specific matchup a little bit better, just given how there are some interesting cheap options, some low salary players that definitely are worth a dart throw, and somebody, especially for instance, like a Patty Mills that we'll get to, is somebody that I definitely want to touch on.
Yeah, let's do it that way. I remembered as we had started recording here that you had mentioned that last night. And since we do have 3 games, it'll take about the same amount of time. So let's go that route. The first one we're going to start with is going to be Golden State at Brooklyn. This is a 7:30 tip-off here. Brooklyn favored by a bucket. We got about a 220 projected point total here. All the games tonight are right around the same. We got a 220, a 218, and a 219. So nothing wildly dramatic there. And then even though Utah is favored by 8 at home against that depleted Phillies team, as we mentioned, they lost to a depleted Miami team at home, and they were not. Utah was fully healthy for that one. So take us through Golden State and Brooklyn. couple friends on each side. You got Steph Curry, you've got Kevin Durant here. What do you want to do with this one here? The world is your oyster, my friend.
Well, starting at the point guard position, if I really want to look at both sides of this, Steph Curry has been absolutely phenomenal, and we get him at a slight discount here at 10.9. He was just 11.4, 11.6, and 11.7. So I really like the discount. I obviously understand that Brooklyn has been pretty decent, but I feel like Steph Curry's like matchup proof. He just moves around so much. You can't guard him. His shot when it's falling, he's just absolutely phenomenal, especially with the 3-point bonus over on DraftKings. James Harden at 10.6. It's a fair price point. It definitely is. We have seen inconsistent performances from James Harden, where in some good matchups he has performed well against New Orleans, scored 68. Just against OKC, scored 48 fantasy points, which I actually thought that he would do better in that one, but his offense really wasn't needed. They got out to a pretty large lead in the fourth quarter. I would think that without Joe Harris, he might have to step up offensively, especially if they want to keep up with the high octane offense of the Golden State Warriors. I mean, they're just filled with shooters. I can't even imagine when Klay Thompson is back. Jordan Poole at 5'9" definitely, is suitable, especially on a small slate. There aren't too many players on a slate like this where you want to cross them off. I think that Poole has shown that on any given night when his shot is falling, he can somewhat fill into the shoes of Klay Thompson, and he's going to be a heck of a player for the future as well. But there's a value piece over here on the point guard and shooting guard position that I think is extremely important, and that is Patty Mills. We saw him really have a strong performance the other night, and I think that coincides with Joe Harris's injury. Joe Harris is a very, very good 3-point shooter, but he has not been too valuable this year. He's actually been somewhat of a liability. And this injury made Patty Mills step up, and Patty Mills scored 38.5 fantasy points, which is tough to replicate. I mean, he went 10 of 16 from the field, but at his price point of 3.8 thousand, it's very, very tough to get away from Patty Mills. I think that he's one of the best value plays on the slate, especially given, the injuries of, Joe Harris. And if you think about it, Brooklyn doesn't really have too many offensive pieces off the bench that can, provide besides, James Harden, Kevin Durant. Those are definitely the two players that are the go-to offensive contributors. LaMarcus Aldridge has been stepping up, but they need another shooter, and I think Patty Mills really fits that. So for the point guard position, I really like Patty Mills as a value piece. If I had to pick one or the other, or between James Harden and Steph Curry, I'm actually going Steph Curry. I really like Curry here, and I think that he can definitely pose some fits for Brooklyn.
All right, a couple of fun items on that. Joe Harris actually started stepping up a little bit. He is not that far off of his season averages. The only reason I know this, and it's by exactly the opposite reason of contradicting you. He went to the high school, that a tiny town, 2 towns over from mine. So he went to high school that literally their town, 2,500 kids, freshman through senior, they had 450 students, same as my high school. And they were our league rivals. Now, granted, I went there 30 years before he did, but it's one of those, and that was the town my dad worked in. So a lot of, he used to go watch his games in high school and stuff. So followed him. He came out to the University of Virginia here, which is not far from where I am. I haven't actually met him, but I have met his dad before. Before he was in the NBA, when he was still in college. So I always just kind of see what's up, because it's a fun little story from someone coming from a town that small, in the middle of nowhere, like Chelan, Washington. Go Billy Goats. That was their high school mascot. So that was interesting. The James Harden one's kind of interesting as well. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, he's so horrible. Is he? Is he really? So here's his stats compared to last year. He's playing 2 minutes less. His field goal percent shooting is down 5%. Okay, that's not great. His 3-point percent shooting is up 3%, and he's making the same from behind the arc. He's getting 2 less foul shots per game, making 1.5 less per game, and then it all told, basically he's averaging 5 points less, 1.5 rebounds less, and one assist less. He's not horrible. We just haven't seen those James Harden 80, 85 fantasy point nights with the regularity that we're used to. When we have a healthy Kevin Durant, I don't think we're going to see those because these guys are kind of they're sharing the ball well. Harden's like, yeah, I'll be the facilitator. I have zero problem with that. He's still going to score about 20 every game. And then Durant's going to be the guy that goes for 40 points and puts up the big ones. So I think it's interesting the way it's changed. If we didn't have the James Harden name here, if we didn't have the James Harden who has flirted with 100 points, and if he didn't actually get it, DK-wise, a couple times over the last 5 years, he was darn close. That's not the James Harden we have anymore, but we have a pretty darn good fantasy player here whose salary is reasonable for what we're seeing. So we have to recalibrate a little bit since clearly he has with his game. And then Patty Mills, yeah, you're absolutely right, man. He's still getting it done. He can still knock it down from three. He doesn't do much else anymore, but in a pinch here, I think he's quite the interesting option. Let's look at shooting guard kind of for our team here. We've got a little dinged up Gary Payton, nothing too crazy to worry about there. This is where we've got Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins coming into play. On the other side, we've got Bruce Brown, may see a little bit more in the minute section, but he probably won't go much over 25, 27. He may get another field goal attempt or two, but we kind of know what we're getting with him. So, but it is a small slate. So these are the kind of guys that we're going to have to work for here. Do you like perhaps down near the bottom a Damian Lee, or what do we do with an Andrew Wiggins who is like a perfectly functional DFS player at 6,500, qualifying at shooting guard and small forward, will likely be on 50% of all lineups because on DraftKings, because he qualifies for shooting guard, small forward, guard forward, and utility. That's 5 of the slots he's eligible for. He's going to be there. What do you want to do with these guys? What do you like at the 2 guard here?
Yeah, so I mean, Andrew Wiggins is an inconsistent player for sure, especially for DFS, and you don't really feel comfortable rostering him. But in his past 3 games, he actually has been, performing well. Against Minnesota, scored 43.5 fantasy points, went 14 of 19 from the field. Against Chicago, scored 32.25 fantasy points, went 5 of 15. So relatively inefficient night, but still put up 32 fantasy points. Against Charlotte, went 12 of 19. So clearly when he's needed to be aggressive and needed to step up offensively, that's when you start to see Andrew Wiggins' ceiling. So he scored 40 points in his most recent game. I like him here at 6,500. It's kind of like riding the hot hand. And when Wiggins is starting to find his stroke, I like it, especially when he's starting to feel confident, because I feel like the skills have always been there, especially if you've been paying attention to his career. And it's not the easiest matchup by any means, but I'm expecting that Golden State is going – every player is going to have to step up, because it's going to be a back and forth affair where, we could see it coming down to the wire. If we want to go cheap, I don't mind Damian Lee at 3,200 on the second unit. Don't mind him at all, especially because we have seen that when the starters are out there, it's tough to be productive all the time when you're next to incredible athletes. But if you're a part of that second unit, sometimes you can take advantage of a lackadaisical unit on the opposite end. And I do think that Damian Lee at 3,200 on a typical slate, I really wouldn't get to him. But on a short 3-gamer, this is where these low salary players definitely come into consideration. So he will be a part of my long shot pool for sure. But I really like the upper end on this position, like Wiggins, Poole. Bruce Brown's okay. 4,200, like you mentioned, he'll probably have to step up minutes wise a little bit, which could result in stuff in the stat sheet just a slightly more. But don't really expect a productive offensive game from Bruce Brown. He's mainly out there to contribute in other categories and in other areas. So yeah, I mean, this position's interesting for this game. It's stronger in some other games that we'll definitely get to.
All right, let's look at the small forward. We'll kind of hit on Yahoo at the end of each of the games here, because their pricing is a little all over the place compared to everybody else. So rather than confuse everybody, we'll do it that way. Kevin Durant, the metronome-like consistently, is just absolutely phenomenal. He is shooting 58.6% from the field this year. That is wild. He is shooting 42.5 from 3-point range. That is amazing. And then he's 84% from the line. knocking on wood for him, but he's come back pretty darn good from his injury layoff there. Solid points per game. So he's going to be one of our key guys at the top. That's really the new player introduced here in our 1 game sample size. We've got Draymond Green, who never exciting, but just keeps chugging along. He is the master of the 7-7-7 box score. And then the other guy I want to call out is Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin's just 10 on Yahoo. He's center only, but he is going to be one of our value plays. What do you like here as you go through the rest of the front court for this first game?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously Kevin Durant is easily my favorite Brooklyn net. I really like him a lot, especially with the revenge game narrative. I think that he will have a slight boost in aggressiveness. I think just being a matchup nightmare, he's going to be extremely difficult to guard. I just like him overall this year. And at 10-3, we are getting him at a discount. His previous salary is 10-9, 11-1, 10-7. So I really like him here at the top. I have no problem paying up for him. It's either Kevin Durant or Steph Curry that I really want to get to for this game. And if I want to go down and I want to really deep dive and find a player that I think could have some more usage off the bench, with Patty Mills now, going to step up offensively, who could get 20 some odd minutes off the bench. I really think a sneaky play for Brooklyn is DeAndre Bembry. I really do. I think he's an interesting long shot to target. I kind of put him in the same category as Damian Lee, where it's worth consideration on a short slate like this. So at 3,200, you will need somebody on the bench unit, the second unit, to come up and try to be productive in multiple ways. And I do think that DeAndre Bembry has flashed some levels of productivity over the years. So I don't mind him at that price range at all. Obviously, Andre Iguodala is going to get numerous minutes, 20 some odd minutes. Definitely not the most productive player out there, but he's needed. He's a role player for this team. Absolutely. And, for Golden State, it's interesting. It's not nice to always get the Iguodala, but sometimes he can fall into some statistics that end up helping on a short slate like this.
All right. Just kind of throwing out a few other names that pop on the other sites here. You've got Kevon Looney at 48. I don't want to play him over Bembry only because I'm giving up a center spot. Mm-hmm. You've got Otto Porter. I don't know what to do with him. You've got Nemanja Bjelica, who's pretty solid. I would throw a few lineups his way. Blake Griffin, just 3,900 on FanDuel. He is 10K on Yahoo. Of course, you're going to have to give up your center spot there. But on Yahoo, where you have Bembry at 10, I would play Griffin every time over Bembry. Yeah. No questions asked. So not all $10 players are created equal on Yahoo, but Bembry at 3,200 on DraftKings, yeah, he's definitely going to be in play there. So this is going to be one of those sites that, depending on what slate you're playing, the information and the analysis is not going to be a lift and shift across the way, just because of where the different the roster position eligibilities, the multi-position eligibilities, that's going to tweak things just enough. That'll make it really interesting if you're playing on multiple sites. Our second game here, this is 10 o'clock game. You got Philadelphia at Utah. Again, keynotes, Andre Drummond playing. He's up to 8,700 because Joel Embiid's back out. People were getting fired up. Oh, Andre Drummond's worthless. He's run out of gas. Andre Drummond is just fine. 31 minutes, 39 fantasy points in his last one, 16 boards, 11 points. The game before that, 30. He had 12 rebounds, 31 fantasy points, just 4 NBA points there. He was horrible. He was 2 for 8 from the line, but he still played those 30 minutes. The game before that was against Milwaukee. Somehow he managed to go 8 for 13 from the line, 17 points, 20 rebounds. We're going to see him. We know he's 1.4 fantasy points per minute. He is absolutely fine. This is a perfectly palatable salary for what we're going to get from him. We're getting somebody that projects for around 40 fantasy points. He has upside to 50. I don't think we'll see a 60-point game from him, but good matchup for him going against Rudy Gobert. What do you like in this battle of the behemoths?
Yeah, I don't mind getting to either one of them. I think that Rudy Gobert is pretty cheap at 7,700. His salary recently has, been around 87, 88, 89. Obviously, dealing with Drummond, it's not a typical replacement for a center position. Most teams would think that they're in a dream with Drummond as their replacement. You know what I mean? Like Drummond backing up Embiid is incredible. And I think that we have seen that he can step up and rise to the occasion. 8,700 definitely warranted for what he's capable of. I mean, even just his rebounding is absolutely incredible. His past 4 games rebounding 16, 12, 20, 25. Absolutely ridiculous. He can fall into some points as well, fall into some other statistics. So I like him here at 8,700 on a slate like this where, the first game outside of LaMarcus Aldridge, there's really the center's not too strong on a slate like this. So I think paying up for a player in Drummond makes a bit of sense, especially given, just his potential for the position. Yeah, I mean, I really don't mind either one of these players, but Drummond is clearly the superior in my opinion for DFS.
All right, we've got Tyrese Maxey. How things have changed. He's up to 7,200. That's what's going to happen when you log 40 minutes every game. His last 5 games, he is. Do they do the minutes average on this screen? They do not. But I'm doing reverse chronological order: 43, 40, 39, 39, 44, 45, 37. That's a lot of minutes here.
That is a lot.
He's still getting about a fantasy point per minute. It's probably what we can expect from him tonight. The price is neutral on DraftKings. It's not a draw, but it's not a stay away by any stretch either. So I think that one's all right. If we're looking sort of at Maxey at 72, you've got Conley at 62. You move up, you get Harris at 85. You get Mitchell at 85. And for those wondering at home, after he missed 10 days, week and a half, Harris has played 37 and 35 minutes his 2 games back. I think it's safe to say he's going to play normal minutes. I would think normal minutes lean closer to 32, 33, but it's not, and this game's at altitude, but it is nice to see him getting up there. What are you kind of like in that mid-tier here, just from this team as a good benchmark to compare these guys against each other with about a 15% price differential there?
Yeah, so I really like Donovan Mitchell at the top at 8,600. Absolutely like him in this matchup. I really like Tobias Harris at 8,500. I think that, you're not going to count on Andre Drummond to really provide offensive production all the time. His main reason is to be out there, be a force on the boards, dish it out, get some other good shooters involved. And I think that Tobias Harris is clearly the first shooter on the team when Joel Embiid is off the court. So I really like him there. Tyrese Maxey, like you mentioned, it's a neutral play for sure. I'm not going to stay away from it. I'm going to get to him a decent amount just because of his large minutes, his production. We have seen him actually do pretty well, lately. And that really surprised me because I thought that Shake Milton would actually step up a little bit more than he has. But it's been the Tyrese Maxey show for sure ever since that Joel Embiid has gone down. We definitely have to monitor what the starting lineup is going to be for Philly with Danny Green already ruled out. I would expect that a player like Seth Curry, always involved, always dependent on for his 3-point shot. I feel like he's going to be relied on a little bit more. Obviously, rostering a player like this, if his shot is not falling, obviously you are not going to be having many fantasy points because he doesn't really provide much else than that. 5,400 though, I think is extremely cheap given what he's capable of, and also how Danny Green's not going to be there. A player in Jordan Clarkson is always enticing for me at 5,100. I really like Jordan Clarkson because off the bench he just goes out there and just is going to run the entire offense for the second unit, and most of the time his shot is not going to fall, but I don't care. He went 8 of 17 his last game, produced 37 fantasy points, 3 of 14, 6 of 12, 2 of 13. I'm trying to, not harp on that inefficiency just because I know how talented Jordan Clarkson is. And against a depleted Philly team, you would expect that, this Utah team could get ahead and the second unit have a little bit more run. So Jordan Clarkson's a player at 5,100 that I definitely will be over the field to. I really think that the second unit could have some success here.
All right, looking quickly at Yahoo here, and then we'll get to the last game. We've got Tyrese Maxey at 26. That's reasonable. Tobias Harris at 31. That's actually a pretty good deal. Mike Conley at 20. That's a solid price. We haven't seen the spectacular outputs for him, but at $20, on Yahoo. That's $5 below the average player salary. Jordan Clarkson at 18. Then a couple guys we didn't mention, Furkan Korkmaz at 17. He's just kind of priced out of where he is. He's a heavily scoring dependent guy. He's not coming in at those, those low 4Ks, et cetera. There's enough people that are back and healthy. It's just not really a spot for him. Could he have a game where he gets 30 fantasy points? Sure, he's probably going to need to make 6 3-pointers, but it's not out of the question. It's just kind of hard to count on something like that. We didn't really mention Bojan Bogdanovic. Yeah, there we go. We've mentioned him now. Seth Curry, you did mention, but you forgot to mention this is revenge for Seth Curry, because they traded his dad after his rookie season for Mel Turpin and I forget who else, but that sent him off to Cleveland. And his dad played there 1 year in Cleveland before being drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, the original Charlotte Hornets in the expansion draft way back in the 1988-1989 season. That was still 1 year before your old pal played his first fantasy basketball league. I did not play until the 89-90 season. But you know what everybody probably does now? They probably are playing over here on the Yahoo site, which is obviously a lot of fun at Yahoo. And we have a nice little deal with them that I want to let you guys all know about. If you sign up through the link that is below us here on our YouTube chat and you're not yet a member of Yahoo, sign up, go through there, make a $10 deposit. One, they're going to give you $10, and two, they're going to give us an email as soon as you play in a paid contest. Let us know that you came in on our link. We're going to get you 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. We'll send you a coupon code that gets you 1 month, all access, everything, not Fantasy Cruncher, but everything else. Fantasy Cruncher is a separate add-on. So that is a good deal there for everybody. All right, back to the task at hand. We've got our final game of the night here. San Antonio at the Clippers. It feels like the Clippers are literally playing every other day. I think they only have had one back-to-back, but I swear every other day I'm getting them on a short slate, and I write the DFS building blocks article, and I'm constantly staring at Paul George saying, do I have to write about him again? And the answer is always yes, because he's continually below 50 on Yahoo. He's going to end up being my Yahoo play of the day. And why is that? Well, it's because he's leading his team in darn near every category. He's just been absolutely phenomenal this season. He's 47 on Yahoo. He is now small forward. I think he was power forward earlier or in the last week. But regardless, he's always at one of the forward spots there. But he's going to be someone that is – he's a building block. He's 10-2 on DK, which is perfectly fine. We're not going to have to break the bank to get to him. And he's 10,000 even on FanDuel. I'm hoping there's just fatigue of people playing him so much in this, Pete. He's either been on the late slates or this is his third straight short slate that we've got him on. It just seems he's popping up. I have no problem with him. He just hasn't laid down a monster, as Teddy KGB would say.
Yeah, I mean, this might be one of my favorite games to target. I just feel like we could see an offensive explosion. I really think that Paul George at 10-2 makes a ton of sense. He's been absolutely incredible. He will probably not have the most popularity, just given the names on this slate. You have James Harden, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. It's crazy. There's going to be some players lost in the shuffle, and I have no problem taking advantage of that late night hammer, Paul George. I want him in my lineups. He's going to be absolutely incredible. DeJounte Murray at 9,500. Definitely his salary has come up, but 9,100, 9,100, 9,700, 9,400, 8,900. But guess what? The kid has really developed and turned into an extremely productive fantasy player this year. He's always been really solid and talented. We've seen it, but this year I think that we're seeing a different level from DeJounte Murray, just coming off a 61.5 fantasy point performance where he went 9 of 20 from field, 7 of 14 the game before that, 11 for 21, 5 of 19, 9 of 16. So sometimes he's inefficient, but I like it because I feel like he wasn't too aggressive offensively. He would provide in different areas, good rebounder, good assists. Like you always mentioned, he kind of flirts with a double-double, triple-double all the time. I like him here. 9,500, I would expect a lot of people will think that that's a little too rich for him, but I have no problem getting to him. Some of these Clippers are a little interesting. Reggie Jackson, given his aggressiveness and how he really is inefficient this year. 4 of 17 from the field, 9 of 16, 7 of 17, 10 of 20. He's just going to keep shooting. And whether his shot falls or not, I mean, the Clippers outside of Paul George, they need somebody to step up, especially with Morris on the shelf. So Jackson is always going to be aggressive. He can definitely get us around 30 to 40 fantasy points, on a good night. But 6,100, I like him for this slate. I really do. Our guy, Thaddeus Young at 5,300 is definitely a player that I think is going to be a bargain again. I mean, we have a salary decrease just coming off of being priced at 5,500, 5,700, 5,800. Coming from a game where he was 8 of 14 from the field, produced 32 fantasy points. We get that at 5,300. We will absolutely be happy with that. And I definitely think that it's doable in a matchup like this. There are some really, really cheap spots here, especially on the San Antonio side, that definitely have my interest. I mean, Devin Vassell has been amazing, and I really like him this year because he's consistently priced in the 4,000 range, and he's out there because he's a good defender. He logs large minutes. He's also been pretty productive offensively. So his past 3 performances, 32 fantasy points, 29, 27, not the best shooter by any means, but when you are able to provide, stats and stuff, the stat sheet in other ways, as long as you can drive to the basket and be aggressive at times, I like him here at 4,700. And on a 3-game slate, the 2 players that really, really stick out to me that really feel just completely underpriced, just given their potential, it's Lonnie Walker at 3,700 and it's Doug McDermott at 3,600. I mean, those are definitely 2 players that I will put into my long shot pool because, Doug McDermott, 29 minutes he just logged the previous night against the Lakers. He wasn't really productive. Was 3 of 9 from the field. Started off pretty strong this year and then has fizzled out. But Lonnie Walker, 3,700. I mean, he's coming off the bench, and when he's able to go in there with the second unit, that price just seems a little bit broken for his potential. So especially on a 3-game slate, on a normal slate, I probably wouldn't be too interested. But those 2 players definitely will be a part of my pool.
All right, pop quiz. Who is older, Russell Westbrook or Pat Beverly?
Oh, boy. I'm going to say Pat Beverly.
Pat Beverly is 4 months older.
There we go.
Pop quiz 2. Who is older, Russell Westbrook, it doesn't matter. Pat Beverly or Reggie Jackson, the NBA player, Reggie Jackson, not the baseball player.
I'm going to say Reggie Jackson.
Did you know that Reggie Jackson is only 2 years younger than Pat Beverly? Reggie Jackson's 31. Pat Beverly is 33.
Okay. Yeah.
I wanted to put that out there because people are constantly saying Pat Beverly's washed. He's horrible. True. And then there's others that still think he's a good defender. That's debatable. Right. Annoying, absolutely pesky as hell. Yes, you betcha. Good defender. Well, he jumps the passing lane still. But I just find it interesting that because if we remember all the way back to the Oklahoma City Thunder days, Reggie Jackson was supposed to be the backup, the heir apparent there to Russell Westbrook. Mm-hmm. Reggie Jackson has been in the league for a long time.
Yes, he
has. And it sort of it catches you off guard until you start to think of all the different teams he's played for. It's kind of interesting. The other one you can throw in that mix is Cameron Payne. Because remember, he was the backup, supposed to be the backup for Russell Westbrook after Reggie Jackson worked his way out to get his bag of money. So just wanted to put that one out there. So we got some interesting sort of mid-tier guys there, Reggie Jackson being one of them on this. The pricing is kind of all over the place. If we get to Yahoo, Keldon Johnson's just 22. I think he's 6,900 on FanDuel. That seems like it's a bit much there. He's just 6,000 on DK, a little more appropriate, but he is only power forward eligible there. Thaddeus Young, $20 on Yahoo. Phenomenal option. He just can get it done with the blocks and the steals. Those are worth 3 points each. He's getting a lot more minutes now, or let me rephrase it. He's getting much more consistent minutes. He's seeing between 20 and 26 every game. This is enabling him to flirt with 30, 35 fantasy points most games. He has not really blown the doors off of anything yet. He does have one 40 fantasy point game, but it's lurking. It's there. This is the kind of matchup too against the Clippers where he's going to suit himself relatively well because he can he can go down in the post and he can be the nominal 5 in the absence of Jakob Poeltl against the Zubac's, against the Isaiah Hartensteins, etc. It's not like those guys are absolutely dominant forces down there that are going to cause him problems. And he's mobile enough and he's smart enough to box out and do all the stuff he needs to do. So I think that he is an interesting option here. Is there anything else you want to hit on for our slate?
There's a min-priced player that we'll have to pay attention to, just because Justice Winslow isn't listed on the injury report ahead of Tuesday's game against the San Antonio Spurs, and he is the flat minimum at 3,000. And we did see that, against Minnesota, he logged 21 minutes and scored 28.5 fantasy points. So it's just an interesting piece to kind of keep our eye on, pay attention. Obviously, it's the late game, but hopefully we can hear something throughout the day. And obviously, it's 3-game slate like this. It's always about finding just that one under-the-radar player that can possibly outproduce their salary. And, Justice Winslow could be a part of that pool that I have no problem getting to.
All right. Well, we'll have to see. And would you consider, you've got to pivot right away in this same game? Now they're at different positions, but you've got Lonnie Walker also at $10 there. So Winslow's power forward. But if you start utilizing the utility, or set up a 2v2 with a utility and a guard, or utility and 4, there are ways you can maneuver into that. You're going to want to have a bailout because
absolutely,
I'd rather roll with Walker. But you're right. There's nothing that says Justice Winslow can't outperform Walker on the night at the lower ownership, and that's the perfect example. So we'll kind of segue off on this one. But late swap is a huge thing. You guys hear Greg Ehrenberg talk about it. You hear host of the Slate Starter podcast, Eric Lindquist, constantly talk about it. Rinpack constantly talks about it. We have a perfect example of it tonight. I'm gonna have to go look at my lineups, but I've got 45 minutes here to figure out. 35 minutes to figure out what I want to do with Fred VanVleet, who is playing. He was questionable heading into the slate, and Damian Lillard is also playing. He sat out yesterday in the game for Portland. Now he's dealing with an abdominal injury. I would rather go with Fred VanVleet because I don't see any reason why they'd push him back. But here's 2 guys that are going to that unless people late swap onto on such a large slate, they're only going to be 3 to 5% owned because people weren't going to put them in there because it's the later game and you need multiple spots to reverse engineer that value and not leave $1,000 on the table or something like that. So these are the fun parts. Now, does it mean they're a great play? No. Does it mean either one of them is going to get 50 fantasy points? No, not at all. They're both kind of not at 100%. But you now have someone who is absolutely capable of doing that nobody else is going to. It's a leverage game here. And if you're playing these giant tournaments, the difference between first place and 10th place is like 90% of the payout. It's sickening. The difference it is. So these are the little edges that you're looking for. And that one that pays off can cover you for months, as opposed to the status quo or playing it safe. So when you hear Eric and all those other guys talking about it, they're talking about it more from a leverage standpoint than necessarily all of a sudden it becoming an awesome play. And this is the best example to see of that because we're going with 2 guys that are dinged up.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I used to purposely put a lineup together. I used to put like only a few lineups together where I would purposely roster the questionable players in the late games just in case, but I would kind of like construct my lineup so in case that they were out, I wasn't going to basically throw my money in the fire. I wanted to make sure that, okay, if they're out, I'll have a solution to that. But if they for some way make it into the lineup, I will have some leverage on the field. So I absolutely love what you just said there. Yeah.
And again, it's all got to work out, but these are the margins. These are where the edges are that we're looking for these days. They're not gimmies anymore, but they're still out there. They're still out there. So anyway, well, thank you for joining us here, Pete. You guys can follow Pete on Twitter at Pete the Heat MMA. I am at Emac DFS, and of course, it is Awesemo _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.